Wonderful. Thank you very, very much.
Great.
Okay, great. So thanks again for chatting to us. So these webinars have been about, they're done in collaboration with UCT's research office, which is the client we're working with. So they've been more focused on research and collaboration and student mobility than on teaching and learning, which has obviously also been hugely effective. Kind of bear that in mind. And there's been a whole series about it, about postgrad mobility, undergraduate mobility, virtual conferences. And this is the sort of wrap up to look at how things have changed completely. Okay, so I'm going to jump into the first question. Just what impact has this change of medium had on relationships, and particularly relationships with international collaborators during this time?
Thank you for the question. I think we've been seeing a change coming a long time, and in some senses, we either chose, some of us chose to ignore it, some of us chose to delay it for a little bit later, some of us chose to just do smaller changes to adapt to this. But there was a change in the medium of and the opportunities for collaboration with international co-workers. Now, in my experience, what has happened is a change in the confidence of using technology among international collaborators. So what do I mean by that? There was a certain level of trying to avoid technology and use as simple mediums as possible. So exchange of emails. Now it's we are all more confident with the technological advancements. We were forced in a way to use them in our everyday life. So now it's much easier for collaborators to, instead of writing an email, organizing a meeting, an online meeting. So that's the one side, that we all have a little bit more confidence of using all of these mediums now. The other side is, I would say, a more organized, a more directed communication between collaborators. And what do I mean, collaborators? What do I mean by that? We used to go to conferences, we used to go to all of these seminars, and the chats were happening during coffee time based on something we heard. We didn't know each other. They were happening by accident, all of these relationships. Now they were more directed, they are more intentional. So if I need to collaborate with a certain international collaborator, then I can't wait for when we're going to meet in a conference. I have to be intentional and try to communicate with a specific person. So I think it changed the way we pursue collaboration with, not only with international collaborators, but also within the country, because we don't travel yet.
Thank you very, very much. And this switch to this medium, what impact, you kind of touched on, but what impact does it have when it comes to building new networks and building new relationships, especially for young researchers?
I think it's just a change of mindset that has happened. So me as a young researcher, when I started with my career and when I started going to conferences and presenting my work, I had to first establish finances. I had to first establish good relationship with my seniors within my department so that I'm part of grants, and then being able to travel to the different conferences to get to meet people. Now, the positive of all of this change we're experiencing is this step, not that it doesn't exist. I mean, we're going to go back to face-to-face conferences, but in a different format in the future. But it takes the stress away. For example, next week, I'm attending an econometrics conference. As a young researcher, I might have struggled to find entry to this conference and get to listen to all of these presentations and get to be part of it. Now, I don't need that. I can just as well enter the meeting, the electronic meeting, and get to meet people. So that's the positive. Now, the negative in all of this is obviously countries like South Africa or other countries, let's call it of the global South, the access to infrastructure, the access to internet, the access to data, even to electricity in our country, has made this young researchers have serious problems. not only to deliver, to do their own research, to conduct their own research, to do their own analysis, find data, and all of this, but also to be able to network. If the university campuses continue being closed for the majority of the students, and the students struggle, and the young researchers struggle, and the postdoctorate researchers struggle to get connection with this. But before I go into more negatives that obviously have their own, we have our challenges, and we have, let's put it like that, there is an opportunity to make a difference. Another positive of this whole change of how to build networks and relationships is, as a young researcher, I never had the chance to attend a seminar of a very big name in my field. Now I can. Now, with the right channels and with the right opportunities, I can attend big names, prolific authors in my field, explaining their own research, which in other cases I would never had the opportunity, or ask a question to them. I never had the opportunity to do that. In an environment where I'm sitting in a room with hundreds of other professors, hundreds of other experts of many years in the field, me as a younger researcher, I never had the confidence to raise my hand and go and ask a question, because I always felt that sometimes the question is self-explanatory. Maybe I should not ask that. Now, within this virtual environment, the opportunity is there. You can ask a question, you can take it to the speakers, and you'll get a reaction.
That's wonderful. Thank you very much. That's what we've been hearing since we started this series of videos, is that people who would never have asked questions before everywhere are now asking questions and engaging. It's really, really very interesting.
We see that in virtual classes as well.
It's wonderful.
It's, we used to teach and we used to probe in a face-to-face environment for students to ask questions, and usually you would get the email afterwards, or you would get the question after class, and then you would answer it only to one student. Now we have questions during class. Students are interacting much easier with us.
It's amazing, an amazing unintended consequence. So I'm going to skip the next two questions because I think you've answered them, unless you have more to say. And then go straight into, if you can focus more on whether you think there's a greater opportunity for inclusivity as we've shifted online.
Okay. So again, as we're thinking of inclusivity, there are obviously positives and negatives. There are gains and losses with this change to a virtual medium, if you may. And again, I'm going to go back to my initial statement of the change has been coming. Okay? We've seen it happening through the years, in some places slower and some places faster. Maybe we chose not to see it, or we did it intentionally, or we didn't. But the inclusivity concept within this change into virtual environment, on the one side, it's the discussion about access. Okay, so the moment we fix the challenges of access to electricity, to data, to infrastructure, then we have a very good platform, a very good restart to make sure that our forums, our debates, our research is becoming more inclusive. But it has to be intentional. There has to be moving forward, thinking about being inclusive. So we talk about how more efficient we are with virtual communication and virtual webinars and forums and conferences, but we think about how much money we have saved with all of this, how much more cost efficient we are with all of this mediums now. We think about the carbon footprint, that we don't have to travel anymore, and how all of these are positives in this case. But inclusivity it's not, you said some things are unintentional consequences. I think inclusivity has to come after intentional actions. organizing a webinar, we don't have or a forum or a conference, the excuse of the region we are or where I am, I don't have the finances to bring people representing different groups into the discussion. This argument doesn't hold anymore. We have to be intentional to make sure that all the voices are heard. Nobody stays behind in these discussions. And the same with our younger researchers, our emerging researchers. There has to be an intentional action from the people that give knowledge, that convey knowledge, or let's call it the senior researchers, but there should also be an intentional action from the younger researchers. So when I'm invited as a younger researcher in a forum, I need to, now it's the time to make my voice heard. And as I said, the big thing is the intention behind it. It's not one of these things that will go back to normal, or they will find a new equilibrium, a new balance after this big shock in the system. We have to make it happen. And I think this break now is a great opportunity to rethink of that, because usually we didn't have, the things were happening, we were just following things. Now it's the time to rethink of how we conduct research, how we conduct academic debates, etc.
That's wonderful. Thank you very, very much. I'm finding it interesting that the different generations that we speak to have different views on this, but that's lovely. So the next question is, do you think, I asked how has, but do you think that changing the medium has challenged the nature of global relationships in academia?
I think it has created, or let me put it like that, the way differences in global academia, in what people speak about developed and developing, and global south and global north, and the way differences, and in some senses this change of medium intensified this differences between let's say the more privileged academia nations versus the non-privileged. So I think it might have attributed to the divide between this, because a researcher in US might not have experienced the same problems that a researcher in Congo has experienced with regards to access to everything. So it has definitely showed the differences more prominent now. The relationship between, I think, listening to all of these teams internationally that are looking for the next vaccine and the next, so teams that are working in labs, there is a greater global academic community working together at the moment. And we're working together because we have a bigger purpose. We want to save the world from what is happening around. And I think scientists within the labs, they have a camaraderie. So this global purpose, I think, made the relationships of these academic networks, especially the ones in the forefront of the fight against COVID, being much stronger. I have colleagues from the Global Young Academy that interact and work together the last few months, even more purposefully than before, because we have a common purpose now.
That's fantastic. Thank you very, very much. As we're getting into this, I realize how many questions I'm sending you, but we're down to two more. The last sort of big one is, what do you think the opportunities have been to decenter and to disturb existing power relationships? So have you seen any change in power relationships?
Look, this question can be answered from different perspectives, right? It's how somebody defined the international power relations, and it's how the essence of disturbing is bringing in the discussion. Because for me, that I like challenges, the word disturb might be a positive one. We needed to disturb the international power relations, and we needed to disturb the status quo. And maybe as society, we needed to look at these relations much closer to the impact they make. So I think, yes, the balances have changed between different countries, but in my view, they had to change. That's again, I'm going back to it had to happen. We had to restart, we had to relook. We talk about sustainability and the future of the world, but we never had the chance as a planet, as a global community, to sit and say, look, what has happened until now, we know, but now we need to find out the new way forward. And I think that these months, this year, has provided this opportunity to do that. So in a way, we needed this disturbance of international relations. We needed this overall discussion of other developed countries, although I hate the separation between developed and developing. For me, it's very monolithic, it's very black and white, and I don't like it. But in the context of the discussion, is we had to disturb the status quo that the developed countries, let's call it regionally, the global north are the leaders, and the developing countries have to follow in the same path. It's the time to say, you know what, let's all learn from each other. It's the time to say that it's not the fact that a country is more industrialized that has to lead the political debate or the policy debate or the technology debate. Maybe it's the time now to rethink about that and rethink about this established notion of they and us. I think under the COVID, we've all learned that there's not they and us, we're all together in that.